Okay, welcome everyone. We'll call the meeting to order at 7:01. We are missing Paula this evening, but Whitney has volunteered to take over our secretary duties. Thank you. I just want to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones at this time. And also just hope that we can have or the goal is to have a respectful meeting and treat one another with respect. You know, board members to board members and community members to the board. And please refrain from, calling out any individual names, anything like that. Again, let's have a respectful meeting this evening. Thank you. Okay, we'll move into the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve our agenda?
Point of order. I stand for point of order. The agenda is in error because the code of conduct resolution is new business, not unfinished or continuing business. Because at the close of a session that ends the term of some or all members, which would have been in November, matters temporarily but not finally disposed fall to the ground. You may reintroduce the topic, but it is not continuing business.
Thank you for your comments. Linda?
I'd like to amend the agenda, please. I'd like to add an item, if I might. Under 6B, there's an item I. I'd like to add an II, and I'd like the topic to be the recount, please.
My point is still on the table, and I haven't received a response from the president or the parliamentarian.
So, does anyone have any feedback for the?
I don't know the answer to that. I apologize.
I can read.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what.
Can you come to the microphone and read it, please?
This is from further rules and explanations. It's not on?
Oh, yeah, you just have to get close.
This, huh?
There.
Is it, okay, I wasn't close enough. Okay, this is section 21 adjournments. Here it is. Further rules and explanation, it's on page 237. C, when an adjournment closes a session in a body that will not have another regular session within the quarterly time interval, which is not what we're in, or closes a session that ends the term of all or some of the members, as may happen in an elected legislative assembly or board, matters temporarily but not finally disposed of, except those that remain in the hands of committee to which they have been referred, see page 90 and 91, fall to the ground. That committee requires that it be reported on at the next regular meeting. You cannot continually carry on a topic under unfinished business. And I can read other parts too, but I think that pretty much sums it up. Sorry, I stuttered.
Make a motion to move it to new business.
Item are we referring to?
Can we just,
Which item are we referring to?
Beg pardon?
Which item are we referring to on the agenda?
Oh, the fact that the code of conduct is listed under continuing business, and it is actually new business.
then I'd like to make a motion to move it to new business.
I don't think you can do that at this meeting, because this goes on to say they can, however, as referring to the mislabeled, be introduced at the next session, the same as if they had never before been brought up. You can put it on the next meeting clearly, under new.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Again, I don't, the drop, you're saying the drop is the fact that we're on the other side of the AGM.
Um,
So it was dropped at the AGM because we had new board members come in. And I don't remember, I guess in that regard, you can say it was dropped. And that the fact that this is the first session it's come up since then I guess you could say that that's correct. That would be new business.
It would be new business, but it wasn't on the agenda for new business. It was on as old business.
Mr. President,
Go ahead.
may I move that the item Code of Conduct Resolution be removed from continuing business?
And
Second.
Do we need to say and added to the next
This is
meeting
step one.
agenda?
We remove it from continuing business, because she's right. This is the first time this is brought up. It should not be in continuing business.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it was brought up at the December 12th meeting, and it was included in the packet on December 12th meeting.
No.
Well, no, but, well, the resolution and the code of conduct was included in the December 12th packet, and what we said at the December 12th meeting was that we would review, and then at a later time, we would come back and vote on it. And I haven't received any comments or feedback on the code of conduct since the December 12th meeting, which is why it's on the agenda as continuing business.
But it's not, it's, the resolution is new. We were only discussing the code of conduct. We were not discussing making it a resolution. And at that time, Leslie also stated that it was not enforceable. She was. At that time that we discussed that, we did not discuss it as a resolution. We discussed it just as the code of conduct. It was just introduced, here is the code of conduct, not we are going to review this and make it a resolution. So it's been added to, making it new business. I believe that's what Nancy's point was, which it's different now,
But
you know?
the motion is to remove it completely from this meeting. So,
That's the motion on the table.
right.
Call the question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank you.
So make a motion that the agenda be adopted as revised.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, and thank you. Okay, we'll move into board member announcements. I don't know who's first. Go ahead.
Okay. The Finance Committee is in need of additional members because Karen was brought on as onto the board. Paula Birchler withdrew because we are only allowed to have 2 board members on the Finance Committee. There have also been 2 more resignations. Therefore, I would like to ask NNE to post that position, please, and for 30 days, which I believe will be up on March the 15th. As applications come in, I will send a questionnaire to each one of the applicants, and we will select 3 members. Thank you.
So that's the question, how many vacancies?
3.
Other announcements? Go ahead, Mike.
Just to let you know, the Emergency Preparedness Committee is having another grab-and-go bag on April 18th at 10 o'clock. Doors open at 9:30 and it'll be from 10 o'clock until 12 o'clock. On the 18th, there will be 3 speakers, and of course, each person that has signed up will get the bag and the contents, just as we have done in the past. Thank you.
just had some follow-up from a previous question that was asked about the capitalization of assets. Is this an appropriate time to just, okay. When would be a,
That should have gone onto the agenda. Yeah.
okay. Well, it was just information.
It's just if information you can, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So there was a question about the audit memorandum, the management memorandum regarding the capitalization of assets, specifically roads, and the memo said, "We recommend the association review its asset capitalization policy to align with industry standards in order to consider the value of fixed assets. Assets that do not generate significant cash flows from usage fees may be better presented as expenses when costs are incurred." So that came from the management memorandum, and there was some discussion about that. So following up, I did some research on how Bellingham, the city of Bellingham and Whatcom County handle their roads specifically, as that was the example that was used. Both Bellingham and Whatcom County do specifically list roads, bridges, sidewalks, similar items in their capitalized assets. They also, Whatcom County says various projects related to roads, bridges, road-related improvements, and drainage systems. And the city of Bellingham does go on to say how they choose what assets should be capitalized. They say they are defined by the city as assets with estimated useful life in excess of 1 year, and individual cost of each asset category in the excess of the following, and then it's based on different things. All depreciable assets are depreciated using the straight line method, which is similar to a similar basis for how we do ours.
Any further board member announcements? Go ahead.
Tuesday, I believe it was Tuesday, I went to the Trail Subcommittee meeting, and I felt pretty inspired by the amount of work these people put into cleaning up the trails. And March 21st, there's a scheduled cleanup for Area Y, and that's going to be between 9 and 1. They're still figuring out the details of where to meet and everything like that, but I know that subcommittee needs members and people that like to chop stuff down and stomp around out there. So if you're interested or know someone who is, I would suggest that you sign up.
Thanks, Joshua. Karen?
Well, I just want to add one clarifying thing. We do have staff that works on trails, and we also have a volunteer committee that works on different trails. And so there's a little bit of a different thing, but we have both going on. Just want that clarified. Thank you, Joshua.
Sorry if I overstepped.
No, you didn't. There's confusion sometimes.
Okay, any further board member announcements? Okay, we'll move into property owner comments, and we'll limit that to 15 minutes this evening.
Nancy Alionak, 4 Sandalwood Circle. When I read that proposed code of conduct, I wondered, why now? What has happened recently to warrant this draconian document, and where did it come from? The answer is on the last page of the code of conduct in the very fine print. It says RAD, Las Vegas presentation, January 2017. And that is when Richard Allen Davis, a Bellingham lawyer, gave a presentation at the Community Association Institute Law Seminar. This is a non-disclosure agreement, not a code of conduct. It is one-sided. The provisions of this code may only be enforced by the board. Only the board can decide if there is a conflict of interest and what a fact is. The board could vote The 13% dues increase calculated by a board member and CPA was a factual misrepresentation and then subject that board member to disciplinary and/or legal proceedings. And this code violates the Washington Open Meetings Act because it deprives the accused board member of their right to a public hearing. Now, coming from CAI, this document is no surprise. The CAI's convention theme that year in 2017 was all in to win. It is a sure bet. You'll walk away a big winner, knowing exactly how the community association game should be played. So CAI thinks we are a game and we are being played. Got that?
Hello, Ann Cope, 52 Louise Drew Drive. I want to be clear about the issue of the 67 found ballots. No explanation has been given that makes sense, only conjecture. Marlene's explanation that a stack of white envelopes, which included ballots, was picked up by mistake, I contend that's impossible. I appreciate that she and Linda have been clear in acknowledging that they don't know how this could happen, but given the gravity of this election, it's simply unacceptable. The counting process goes as follows. A pair of counters is given a stack of yellow envelopes, which has a privacy envelope containing a ballot inside. One person runs the envelope opener on the yellow envelope. The other removes the privacy envelope, creating two piles, empty yellow envelopes and sealed privacy envelopes. The yellow envelopes are then picked up by an entity member once they're all empty. The next step is to open the opener across the white envelopes, and then the ballot's removed. And again, an entity member picks them up once they are empty. The ballots are then counted. One stamp cannot go to the next. Marlene contends that somebody came and picked up a stack of envelopes by mistake. This is an example of 67 ballots. They would have gone through the process of being removed from the yellow envelope, leaving a ballot in here. We are to believe that a stack of 67 of these with ballots inside were picked up by an entity member without realizing, one, that they were still had ballots in them, or are you contending that this was done individually, Linda? Because the other thing is, this has never happened. I asked specifically, has it ever happened? No. Not with one ballot? No. 67. And also I was told that they were locked up at night. In the daytime, during counting, they're in the back of the room, the cases are open. I was also told it would be very difficult to bring ballots in. One of the counters left his coat on. You're supposed to remove your coat. It's supposed to be in a closet. He left his coat on the entire counting process. So, I think since you can't explain it, it's not acceptable. A recount is not going to solve that issue that a stack of white envelopes with ballots inside were found in the back of the room in an open case. And I don't know how you rectify that. But I do know that the process was not safe. The ballots were not safe. Thank you.
Hi, Terry Fisher, 16 Cold Spring Lane. I had a couple of points that I wanted to make. I know I can write email to the board, but in the past, it seems like I never get much of any replies back on most of the information that I try to find there. So I'm bringing it out right now. I think the right thing to do right now is go back, and I've heard a couple of you from the old guard say, we're going to change, we're going to take a look, we want to go back to the 7% after the SGM. I know I heard that people said we want to wait until after the SGM. It's after the SGM. Show this community that you care about what they're voting. And somebody make a move to get back to the 7% that this community voted in a major way to put that cap on. And I think if you did that, maybe that would be a nice step towards bringing the community together. 7% of $127.37 comes out to $136.29. I know that that's not going to break us. You know, it may mean some changes, but there are people out there that need that money, need security from one year to the next. And a 50% 1 year, between 2 years, we've doubled our dues. That's not acceptable to a lot of people, and that's one of our major issues. I really hope it would be best if one of the old guard would come up with a resolution, or I would hope that one of our new people would consider that, because I think it's the right thing to do. Secondly, another thing is that I think I've said this all along since the WCIOA, the board chose to ignore our vote on the dues and readily accepted that major increase of 47% because the WCIOA said you could. I think that there could have been a compromise there, but obviously there wasn't. The community was trying to say, that's not what we want, that's not what we can afford. And it was ignored. And people are getting tired of that. Another thing is the spending, where the money is getting spent. We've got to get better at that. Am I out of time yet? Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. One of the things, I mean, everybody asks for examples. Can I just give one example? Yes, sir. The one study, I happened to walk through Area Z, and I did hear something about a big Area Z upgrade, and then I saw what appears to me to be more or less a tent in there, and I understand we paid on that entire project close to $750,000 is what I'm hearing. And I just can't see that. I mean, I put up a few buildings myself, and that's vinyl. I mean, who's accountable for these things? That's the problem, is I think we're wasting money in a lot of areas. The bridge going into Gate 9 cost us $500,000, and you can hardly drive over it already. Somebody didn't follow up on that, so that's the kind of things where I think we can save money. Thank you.
Hi, Sonia Volt. Sonia Volt, that's my name. Let me be real clear about that, because that seems to be some bone of contention. I'm not sure why, but you know that's my name. I hope you're enjoying whatever entertainment you get out of spreading rumors like that. But based on what we observed during the certification process, we don't feel a recount will address the numerous irregularities in the SGM election process. We feel these irregularities and discrepancies render the true result of the election uncertain, even with a recount. A recount will not address the 67 ballots found 30 minutes prior to the SGM. A recount will not confirm that a builder not in good standing actually brought his lots current on Friday afternoon and voted all noes. Keep in mind, this builder is on record saying he was strong-armed into voting for the Vision 2020 by the former GM in previous elections. And a recount will not verify that the almost 100 unused printed ballots are all accounted for. If this were a union vote, a revote would be in order. Instead, we are not only told that we would require another petition, we were told even a simple recount by volunteers will require us to put up a bond. So speak up and pay up. To be clear, the issue has nothing to do with the integrity of the NNE members individually. It is about the integrity of the process as a whole, and that's what needs to be addressed. Regarding Terry's comment and the bylaw limitations, I'd like assurance that you will be honoring the limitations as the calculations were written in the petition explanation and as was circulated with the petition. It was also sent out in the Sudden Valley e-blast to the community, that full explanation. I would like assurance, because what I've been hearing from you guys is an interpretation where you say you're going to honor the bylaw limitations, but what you talk about is that you're going to combine the 7% and the 15% to come up with some grand total, plus you're not calculating it the way it was intended to be calculated. And I know we've discussed this, and Leslie, you said that it could have been handled better. So let's handle things better now. Let's be different. Okay? So I'd also like to see it go one step further and take the miscalculation off the Sudden Valley website. I've made numerous requests to you guys and the attorney to remove that from that website. So it's an incorrect calculation. You apparently made it, which I'm not sure why you made the calculation, but it's been on that website, and I have asked countless times to remove it. So please do that. Thank you.
We have about 2 minutes left in our 15-minute period, so this will be the last board member comment before we move on. Thank you.
Steve Teskey, 28 Jubilee Lane. I'm going to say some things that are very obvious here, I think, and that is many community members were and continue to be upset over the lack of response to the 7% max dues bylaw, and don't buy the argument there was insufficient time to draw back the 2020 budget to reflect that limit. And it's pretty clear. Many believe it demonstrates a lack of transparency and deeply feel that they have a right to know exactly where their money is being spent, which is tough to do. We now find ourselves in a ridiculous situation of name-calling and, worse yet, threats to people and property. What do you think the kids are taking away from this? Our kids. Let's straighten up. Was that applause? I personally know of one family in particular that was planning on moving here, but they've canceled their plans because of the toxic atmosphere we're all breathing. The recall movement. It was initiated and completed in accordance with our bylaws, as printed. The results are certified. I don't believe that there's a plot to switch ballots or anything like that. It's ridiculous. So let's get this chapter behind us and move on. If you want to do it again, do it again. But it's a new effort, not an old effort. My opinion, Board of Director really needs to improve its communications to ensure the community knows what its goals are and how you're going to reach them. Now's the time to pick candidates for the coming election that are in your, whatever that happens to be, ballpark. Support them, and we'll have a good election in the fall, and we'll continue to move forward. By the way, if all 67 ballots were yes in favor of the recall, the worst case would be a 1.44% increase. Would make no difference. Perhaps there was a mistake made. I don't know. I wasn't there. But let's move on.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. That concludes our property owner comments. Is there a board response? Go ahead.
There has been quite a bit of discussion about how our money is being spent. The full budget for this year is on the website. If you go and you click on, I think it's resident resources, and then you click on new owner information, and there's a statement there about what is the budget, and you will see an exhaustive, 50, 75-page budget, every single line item of where every penny is going in 2020.
Go ahead, Linda.
I'd like to correct a comment by Ann Cope, please. She indicated that the white envelopes were taken by N&E. Normally, the counters or Marlene Harlan or an assistant actually takes and gets the white envelopes and puts them back into that case that they're all stored in. Any of you that watched certification in the counting, you know that there's two boxes. One's yellow, one's all the white envelopes. So it isn't an N&E member that does this, and I want that to be perfectly clear. Unless Marlene asks us to do something, we don't touch the envelopes until they go back into the cases. We then alphabetize as best we can the yellow envelopes, because any one of you can come to the meeting on Saturday and say, show me that yellow envelope so that I know that I voted and that my vote was counted. And I can go in that box and I can get you your yellow envelope. And that's why those are done that way. The white ones are just simply left there. As far as the 67 ballots and why they're impossible, Ann asked me this question and I answered her. I've actually answered several people within the community that have asked, well, what triggered that? When they number each one of these ballots consecutively with a machine. Thank God we don't do it by hand anymore. Some of you remember that. When we got to the end of all of the mail-in ballots that we knew of through Friday, there were less than 1,700 ballots there. So at that point in time, I'm going, Marlene, something's wrong. And that's when we started looking for ballots. There were a couple yellow ballots for you. For those of you that watched certification, if you'd please raise your hand. Did you all see the one yellow ballot that we found during certification? Do these little things happen? You betcha they do. Is anything bad going on? No. I'll address the recount. You guys don't want to do the recount. That would be for Ann Cope or someone, I believe she's the spokesperson for that group, to say that you want to withdraw that. But I will talk more about that later when I give my report for certification. Thanks.
Thank you. If there's no additional board member comments, we'll move forward in the agenda into our committee reports and voting as necessary. Looks like the first action item is the Long Range Planning Committee and approval of 9 committee members.
All right, so I'm bringing forward my 9 committee members. As I stated at a previous meeting, there were 5 subcommittees as part of the long-range planning. Based on talking with the chairs of those subcommittees, there was a great deal of issues keeping participation, and there was quite a bit of overlap between existing committees that we already have. So I made the decision to not move forward with the 5 subcommittees. Not to say that we maybe won't create some subcommittees throughout the process of going through long-range planning this year, or some task force or something like that. But I'm bringing my 9 committee members for approval to the board for the main long-range planning committee. There'll be Brian Cope, Michael DeVolio, Scott Eubank, Karen Hardesty, Kimberly Harris, Michael Coydell, Adam Tullis, Jerry Pate, and Sonia Vold.
Go ahead, Leslie. Or who's first?
Have you determined yet what the length of the terms is for each of these people?
that would be determined at the meeting.
I just have a question. It was my understanding there's supposed to be 2 board members as the chair and the co-chair, and I was the co-chair, and I have not heard gotten email about any notification to any of the existing members from last year, and I've had several of them email me wondering what was happening. So I'd like to know, out of these 9 names, where are the names of the people that are interested in being part of this committee?
All of these people have applied to be on the committee
Through what process?
through an application to volunteer on a committee.
So what about all the people that are already in the long-range planning committee that haven't been met or haven't been meeting since December when you took over?
There was no terms or anything created last year with the long-range planning committee. So at that point, I determined that we'd basically be creating this committee again. And I have not reached out to any of the people that have applied as of yet. My intention is to email both the people who applied that aren't going to be on the committee and let them know that we'll keep their applications on file for if we have any, if we do create any subcommittees or anything like that, and then to email the people that get approved tonight to be on the committee.
Well, I think I would prefer emailing the people that were on the committee last year to have them be included in this list of names.
There's only 9 positions, so there's like 20 people that applied.
So where are those 20 names? Why am I not included in part of this discussion as the co-chair?
I've been working with Jamie on getting that approval and accepting applications.
Go ahead.
Well, I was wondering, why is this the first time that you're bringing it up? Because I've reported on that several times for when
The last I
was.
heard from AJ was that he was determining when we were going to be meeting.
I didn't, I'm sorry, I was just
I
curious.
haven't gotten any notification from AJ.
Have you gotten notification from Jamie?
No.
Okay, well, I would think that that would be where you would start. And he has reported on long-range planning a couple times.
Not that anything has been moving forward.
I honestly thought that I had heard about applications, but anyhow, I just was curious why it was just now.
Mr. President, Karen.
Do you have the committee charter in front of you? I was on the committee way back when it was established as a standing committee, and I do specifically remember having term limits of terms of 3 years. And that year when we established it, we had varying terms. So some had 3 years, some had 2, some had 1. So I would assume that the existing members are in the middle of their terms.
I met with Leslie and Whitney shortly after taking on this committee, and both of them stated that they did not do terms, that none of the committee members were willing to commit to terms. So at that point, it was basically like the committee wasn't established per the bylaws originally. So, moving forward, it made sense just to start fresh.
Mr. President, Leslie.
I am troubled by the fact that Whitney was the co-chair, and she was not aware that any of this activity was going on. And I believe that it should have come from the chair of the committee and not from staff. They are not in charge of this committee.
What should have come from the chair?
The information that members were being solicited and selected. It appears she did not know until tonight that this was even going to be brought forward.
have several people that I know are interested, so that's why I'm concerned that none of the people from last year were.
There are people from last year on the committee. I have two people that were chairs of subcommittees, both Scott Eubank and Adam Tullis were part of the committee last year.
Mr. President, I do think that when the Long-Range Planning Committee was established by bylaw, that there were term limits. And I think that the committee was established with term limits when it was first brought to the board. Mr. President Steffi?
Go ahead, Linda.
The past chair of the committee told me there was no term limits, so I don't really know how I can, if that's what I was told moving forward, you know, there's.
In that you are correct, because the people who were serving last year couldn't decide who would be the 3, 2, or 1-year terms, but we were operating, and that is not what is concerning me. What is concerning me is the fact that the co-chair has not been informed of what's going on.
Mr. President Steffi?
I feel like what's really going on is you guys don't want to let AJ have people that he's used to working with. We don't tell you who to put on the finance committee, and I think that we're being petty. That's what I think.
Mr. President, Linda?
I just wanted to say, when the Finance Committee first came into being, Samantha Rohrbaugh headed up, and as far as how the different term limits were selected, is the first meeting that she had after it was established, she put everybody's names in a hat. And she had N&E come, it was me at that time, she asked me if I would do it, she drew names, and we decided that the terms of limit would be by the way the names were drawn, and that's how we went about it. I think Clive was on the meeting, was on that committee at one time, so term limits did exist.
And that's exactly what the minutes from last year's long-range planning show as like a discussion, yet none of those terms were actually enacted.
Mr. President, Karen?
So I understand what's going on with the terms now, but I think what the discussion is about is that there are other people that were interested that maybe didn't realize that there were open positions to apply. Was it?
This was posted by staff on the website as an announcement with all the other, when Leslie when at the beginning when we recruited all committees, there was announcements made. I mean, 20 people applied, so it's, you know, clearly people, it wasn't just the old people that applied, clearly people applied to be on the committee knowing that there was, you know, the ability to be a part of it.
Okay, then my follow-up question is, how were they selected if the co-chair was not aware of the process of selecting who to put forward?
I selected them as the chair.
Mr. President, Leslie?
Back in 2017, there were 2 people who put their applications in for the board of directors. It was discovered that neither of them was on the title of the property for the property in Sudden Valley. Linda's aware of that.
That was corrected before their names were submitted.
Yes, it was. And it was corrected by ensuring that their names were put on the title exactly as they were running. Are all of the
Yes.
members that you have brought forward, is their name on the title of the property exactly as they have submitted their application?
Jamie has vetted them all as members and members in good standing.
Under the name that they have submitted their application?
I had an email chain with Joe today on this exact thing, and yes.
Mr. President, Steffi?
Is there anything specific that you're concerned with?
The last time I checked, one of the names that was submitted was not on the title of the property.
It's been corrected.
Joe, has that been corrected?
It has been corrected.
Mr. President, call the question.
Well,
Josh?
Out of all respect, can we, like, not play chess and just do business?
I'll just say that the people that I selected to be on the committee do have some very good qualifications. We have city planners, we have small business owners, we have people who have worked in governments, done long-range planning. It wasn't just like I willy-nilly selected whoever.
Thank you, AJ.
can we just make a commitment that AJ, can we just have a commitment that you'll continue to engage with your co-chair in future happenings?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor of the committee members as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Nominations and Elections Committee.
All right, here we go. I prepared a statement mainly because I want to get it all in there, folks. First of all, I'd like to thank the NNE members and the master counter for a long certification meeting. It certainly is more than is normally required. The due diligence performed helped to solidify the results of the SGM. Thank you to the audience who remained quiet during the process. Thank you to the volunteers who performed the counting. We had a larger than average group this year. New members are volunteering, and this is encouraging that they are willing to volunteer their time. It was interesting and educational SGM to be a part of. There's never been a recall of directors in SVCA history that I can recall. One came close to happening, but the board chose to demand the petitioners a new requirement according to state law rather than our bylaws. Namely, the bylaws required 50 signatures, while state law required the 10% of the membership that we now recognize. Whether or could have applied, they chose the higher requirement, so it never happened. Since this was a first, direction from our attorney and parliamentarian were necessary, as well as having the parliamentarian conduct both a town hall and the SGM in order to provide an impartial chairing of the proceedings in both instances. The committee was a bit frustrated by asking questions of the attorney, but being initially denied the opinion from the attorney since they strictly dealt with how issues raised by the SGM should be conducted. 2 opinions have since been released to the membership since they strictly dealt with how issues raised by the SGM should be handled, and members should be aware and informed of such opinions to help them understand how the SGM proceeded. The anomalies that occurred during counting have been noted in the report, as well as the results of the canvass and certification of the vote. You have it in your packet here, the results. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them now.
It's very thorough, thank you.
Thanks. Can I speak next on recount, or do you want to announce it first, Andrew? Mr. President?
If there's no further discussion on to Linda's statement, we'll move to the next agenda item. Go ahead.
Okay, as far as the recount's concerned, an email has been received by the board and NNE from a group of members requesting a recount. According to the NNE manual, this occurs once a bond or fee has been provided by the requesting members. Some of the NNE committee feel that the decision whether to hold a recount is necessary by a vote of the board. The NNE manual has no language other than being compelled to hold a recount. I would expect that at a minimum, the fee reimburses the association for providing food and beverages to those who will be performing the recount. I've been given an initial number of 16 as counters are paired for this function. I believe this would take most of a day to complete. It shouldn't be hurried as accuracy is extremely important. I believe there is also a cost of association staff time, but I would need to confirm what that would be. Cost for food for the people for the day would be, to meet, $200, were there. So that's what I would recommend for the fee. The board can, if it wishes, pay for all this, proceed with the recount, whatever they choose to do, but unless the requesters withdraw their request, I am prepared to move forward, and so is the master counter. I have one other point of information. Almost forgot it. Oh, shame on me. Just a minute, hang on there. Everybody talks about costs to the association. If I'm not mistaken, I hope I'm right about this. Currently, our costs, and we still have one attorney opinion that we are waiting for, is $16,597, and I believe 57 cents. So this isn't, y'all should know that whenever there's an SGM, whether it's called by a petition of the membership, whether the board decides to have an SGM, these are not normal business expenses. They're not planned expenses. They're paid for out of the UDR. So they do come from somewhere, and it isn't like we haven't spent money on this. Now I'm done.
Thank you, Linda.
Mr. President, Leslie.
I move that we hold a recount on February the 22nd, which will be a week from Saturday.
I'm Marlene, Marlene asked me when, and I haven't got any confirmation. I was waiting after till you discussed tonight. If you want to set the 24th.
Let me start my sentence again.
Okay.
I move that we hold a recount at a time convenient for the NNE chair and the master counter, and that the petitioners be requested to pay the expenses for this recount, which is expected to be in the neighborhood of $200.
I'll second, so we can discuss.
Discussion. No further discussion. Can we restate, do we need to restate the motion? All those in favor signify by. Oh, you were discussing?
I'm sorry, I can't hear what's going on.
Can we have you come to the microphone, please? If this is a, excuse me, if this is a point of order, then please come up to the microphone and state the point of order and your comment, please. Thank you.
What I was going to say in my discussion was that
Drive, and since a recount will not address the issue, which I will come back at property owner comments and discuss, there's no reason we withdraw the recount request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
And I withdraw the motion.
Can I just ask a question about recounts? Oh, I'll withdraw my second. But may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if we have any policy in place where a recount would be automatically triggered. I know municipalities do it if it's within 0.5% or 1%.
I will read to you from the manual if I can find my place here. And yes, there is a recount. A recount will automatically be triggered for any measure on the ballot if the results show a spread of less than 8 votes. Don't ask me why it's 8, but it's 8.
Okay.
History.
Because it was written in 1973.
Probably.
Yeah, that's.
Okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. It looks like that has been removed. Okay, so we're okay to move on to our next order of business, which is under continuing business, item A. Go ahead, Leslie. Go ahead. We
I'm
are on
assuming that
meeting
the-
minutes.
I'm sorry?
We're on the October 10th
Yeah,
meeting minutes.
October At the last board meeting, I did request that the October 10th minutes be clarified, and I did specify exactly what policies were being removed, and it is in here, and I'm assuming that staff brought this forward so that we can approve my correction to the correction.
No.
Discussion.
Discussion, oh. So on this number 13, it says, make it a policy of the board that the budget will be developed giving priority to mandated increases?
This is not a discussion of whether we should have done it. This is what was done.
Well, I
If
was
we
just-
need to bring something back, make
No,
put it on the future agenda.
I'm asking if this wording is correct.
Yes, I looked at the list of policies to be removed, and they are the correct ones.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to our strategic planning session update. Go ahead, Joe.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick update with this. Andrew and the board, you guys have asked to do a strategic planning. We have secured the firehouse here at South Watcom for May 2nd. And I'm in the process right now of interviewing some facilitators to see who will be the best for the community to do this workshop for you guys. So I did meet with one tonight. I got some phone calls into some other people, and we'll see where it goes. But right now, it is slated for May 2nd.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions?
Yeah, is that expected to be an all-day?
9 to 3.
All right, thanks.
And Mr. President, Linda, sorry.
I just have a question. I wasn't on the board then. Is this also going to be open to the membership to drop in?
Andrew, that's your call.
No, this is a meeting of the board for strategic planning, so it won't be open to the public.
Thank you.
My understanding is we can do that, so we can double check and make sure we actually can, but my understanding is we can, but I don't have the specific information in front of me.
Also, I misspoke. It will be at the Geneva Center. It will not be at South Watcom.
Thank you.
Geneva Center?
The Geneva Firehouse.
Okay, next order of business is, well, I guess we're wrapped up, so we'll move on to our property owner comments, and we'll limit that to 15 minutes. Any property owner comments? Going once.
Are you going to get her the information about the meeting, for the next meeting that we found? Yes. Are you going to get her the information? Okay. Make a note.
Anco 52 Louise View Drive. I really want to make this clear, because I really want people to understand the process, that we're not involved in the process. So, counters are given a stack of votes. One of them takes an opener across the top and removes the privacy envelope, and they make 2 piles. Once they finish their piles, somebody comes and takes the empty envelopes. They're left with a privacy envelope with a ballot inside. The pair then, one of them takes a opener across the top, the other person pulls out a ballot. They make 2 piles. Somebody comes and takes the stack of envelopes when they are completed. They then count the ballots into groups of 25. can't go to one step without doing the previous step. So, what was found were 67 of these. Not 67 complete, 67 of these with ballots inside. So that means this step was done, this was removed, and stopped. And I don't know how it could happen when the empty envelopes were not taken until that was completed. I also don't know how the weight difference between 67, and I just have two little cards which aren't even as heavy, is half a pound is the weight difference between envelopes with ballots in them and empty ones. So I don't know how they could even be picked up by accident. And I do believe that Larry Brown was picking up empty envelopes. Jennifer was a counter.
Please, let's refrain from calling out individuals
Linda
by
said,
name. Thank you.
no NNE member picked up envelopes. He did. Yes.
I can't address that. I wasn't there, and any of
I
you were there.
was.
No, I'm
Jennifer
just
was.
saying,
So
the only time,
that's incorrect that no NNE member did.
okay.
So again, there's no explanation how step one was done 67 times and then stopped. The counters couldn't have done this, and then if somebody came and took this part away, they would have been sitting there with nothing to do, right? Because they go through the process until they raise their hands, and Marlene comes and picks up the envelopes. So I want it to be very clear why that answer is unacceptable. And the fact that 67 envelopes ended up in the back of the case and somebody said it wouldn't make a difference, we don't know that it happened only once. The fact that it happened once shows that it could have happened the day before. It could have happened twice that day. I have no idea. I can't figure out how it happened. You can't figure out how it happened. And that's a major problem that a recount will not address. But it is a major issue with our voting, and with that vote particularly. I don't know. I don't know what you do about it, but I do want to make sure that our membership understands that it was not safe, that that was not a safe vote. If nothing else, I want that crystal clear. Thank you.
Mike Wadsworth, 5 Western Lane. Is there a process for, this is a question, we voted and elected people to the Nominations and Election Committee, and one person was made the head of it, and then he chose people to be on that committee, and then he had a hissy fit and quit. Is there a way that we could possibly revisit that and get a possible new head of the committee to appoint new people on it? Because I have skepticism about how it was done. I actually met with the president, and he basically said that he had 2 people that he thought were more qualified to count, and now we have a mess in the count. And so I'm skeptical that that process was actually worked properly. And my second question is, I want to make sure I understand tonight that we have established the fact that Sonia Volt really does exist.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to repeat what we discussed earlier, and it's not, we aren't making an issue about the integrity of the majority of the members of the NNE committee. It's the integrity of the process. There was no chain of command on the ballots. There were a lot of people coming and going. The gun cases were unlocked. You know, so what we witnessed during the certification process was a committee that was committed to getting an accurate count and following that procedure. But the reality is that, as Ann was saying, there is another issue. It is impossible to truly verify the outcome of this vote based on the fact that there is a potential irregularity with almost 10% or potentially more than 10% of the ballots. If this was a union, that would automatically trigger a revote. That's actually what would happen. Now, we realize where we are in this process and that you guys are going to make us do a petition. You're not going to do a revote, which would be the right thing to do, considering. Okay? But let's recognize that there's a big problem here. No matter what happened with those ballots, and no matter what the true outcome of this vote is, the reality is the majority of the members of this community are very dissatisfied and have no confidence in your ability or your willingness to act in our best interest. So at this point in time, even though, because we're not pushing the recount, because the recount's not going to reveal the issue, it's not going to solve the problem. So I hope that the NNE does work on figuring out how to do that. Again, it's a process. It's not an insult to our neighbors. And, but that being said, between now and November, we will be watching you and we will be holding you accountable because we are the majority. We're Sudden Valley. So it doesn't matter what this vote outcome is, you still do not represent the majority of the members of this community. What you could do is recognize where we truly are right now, and you could go, well, we see the writing on the wall, what's going to happen in November. Let's transition this properly. Let's go out on a high note. Let's make this a win for everybody, for this whole community, and not keep trying to hurt each other. Because even tonight, we've already witnessed that. The code of conduct, you trying to claim that I'm not on my own deed, but you don't mind taking my dues. This is really disappointing behavior of people that say they want to work together. So let's actually work together. Back up those words. And that strategic planning that you're trying to do, actually include the community in it. That really matters. That is why everybody is saying they have no confidence in you.
Barbara Walsh, 51 Marigold Drive. I am really sad to be up here tonight. This is not a union, so I really don't care what a union would do. This is a community that is terribly split. It has been completely disrespectful of Whitney. I don't even know her, but if I was her, I'd probably be in tears. You took her job away and you didn't even tell her. But, you know, I also was one of the counters. And I did not know either one of the women that I was counting with, but I can tell you that on Saturday, all day long, the whole time we were there, Ann Cope was sitting next to me. Now, did she ever once, she was there on Saturday as well, did she ever stop and say, oh my gosh, I think you must have picked up the wrong thing? She was sitting no farther away than Lisa is. She could have noticed if something had happened. I understand how it happened. I can see it in my mind's eye, how these envelopes that had ballots in them could have been picked up. It was very chaotic. There were a lot of people there. And to accuse Larry Brown, who knows? But that's libel.
Let's refrain from using member names, please.
Okay, it's libel. So I think that as this new board, I wish you the best of luck in moving this community forward. Your community. It's not my community that is raising the issues and complaining. I think we could work together, but as I've seen tonight, I wish you luck. I don't think it's going to work. Thank you.
Sergeant at Arms, sir, will you please, just a second, will you please stop members from calling out names to each other thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Glasgow, 10 Graybridge Lane. Mine is short. One thing I wanted to say, and I hadn't planned to say this, was I know that Barb just was getting angry about the way that you were treated, but somebody told me you missed like 6 meetings or something like that, and you're never here. So sometimes you don't know everything when you do that. But I wanted to say that, I wanted to reiterate what she said. The argument that we would have lost anyway because of a number of votes that were found is just illogical. It could have happened multiple times. And I didn't know this before, the thing about the yellow envelopes being there with the names, so they can all be checked. Well, that doesn't mean anything. If the white ones with the votes were discarded, you're still putting the yellow ones back. It makes it look like they all voted, but we don't know that they did. So thank you, that's all.
So since I was addressed, yes, I was there, and no, I would not have spoken to anybody directly. I would have raised my hand, as I did when I had a question. In fact, when somebody was looking for things in the garbage, on Friday, one of the entity members was looking for things in garbage, and I did question that. I was not to address any counter personally. As far as the chaos, yes, it was chaotic. I also know that the counters were very focused on each other, so the chaos would have certainly led to 67 ballots mysteriously ending up in a case open in the back. It would not, however, be possible for counters to move forward with their process if 67 ballots disappeared from their table. And if they did, that would be a major problem with a counter. And I did not see any counters that were not capable of doing that. So I don't know what happened, but the chaos created a situation for the ballots to be tampered with. It did not create a situation that they could have been mistakenly taken. Thank you.
Clive Allen, 9 Strawberry Canyon Court. I just want to get clarified in my mind about the long-range planning. I was on it a few years ago for quite a number of years, and if my memory serves me correct, there was always 2 directors on there. There had to be. And the second question is, when names were submitted on forms, and I wrote my form out, the acting chair took them to the board of directors, and the board of directors confirmed who could be on it and who couldn't be on it. To me, it sounds a mess that's going on at the moment. And clarify for me, is there a second director on this committee or not?
Yeah, Whitney is the second director on the committee, and we did just bring the application of approval members to the board tonight. That's what just happened.
Thank you for clarifying.
We'll have one final board member, property member comment after
One
this.
last thing, I'm sorry. As regards term limits, there were definitely, because I was on a 3-year term limit, there was definitely 3, 2, and 1, and it's always been that way.
Correct. There are term limits, but there was not any set up with the past long-range planning last year. And prior to that, we didn't. I believe before that, it was like 2016 since it really was in effective committee. There's no agendas or minutes for, I believe, 2018 or 17 on the website.
This will be the final property owner comment.
Scott Walsh, 51 Marigold. I just want to say to Linda that I thought that the count went the best way it could go. I thought the whole process was done pretty well. What I would recommend is that if a counter, I'm sorry, if one of the vote counters, not the master counter, has an issue, they go to that counter and they talk. They don't go to the public observer and tell them what they think, and go out into a hallway and more people start gibbering, and then it spreads like a wildfire upwards. It should have been, the doors should have been closed and that issue handled between N&E, the master counter, and maybe and the person that had this issue. I was sitting with the person that immediately ran over to Ann Cope and told her. And from there, they went into, I got it, went into a session out in the hallway. I told the master counter that I thought that that person should have talked to either you or the master counter about this issue. Not go running to a public observer, and then they go out in the hallway and do this whole chat. So I would recommend, and it made me mad because chain of command is what I'm used to. And then I got direction, this is my first time doing it, I got direction. I felt that any question I had, I could get answered. The 67 white envelopes and the ballots, I have no idea. I had another question, I went and I asked that question afterwards. So I don't even think that what happened was really ethical. It goes from somebody that volunteered and was counting votes over there to her, and then out in the hallway, and then, boy, the SGM went crazy, and you had, when it should have been, straightened out in that room. Thank you.
Can I say something? Anything? Oh, okay. Just in general. Yeah, I think we have some work to do. That might not be a big deal to some people, but it is a big deal. It's a big deal to have the integrity of the election and the upcoming election. I think that that's a big deal, and I think that Linda, I feel, is committed to it. Being fair, honest, transparent. I don't think that anyone is pointing fingers at Linda. It's hard not to take that personal. But we do need to just look at that, and we need to assure people that the right things are going on. You know, that's how I feel. I just think that, and there's agencies that could help us review our process. I mean, that's something that we need to really think about. That's it. Oh, and please, you guys, let's not come up here to argue with one another. Let's not do that. I'm being serious, like, thank you.
With the elections, I know, Linda, we've had this conversation, I know the board has had it. Just an observation, I think it might be time we get away from paper ballots and we go to electronic. There's still possible error, but then it's not human error.
Right.
I think that's, in this day and age, with the sensitivity of elections and everything, I think probably we should collectively as a board, with N&E, look to make November's an electronic vote.
And when I went to the vote certification, Marlene did say that. That was one of the suggestions.
One of the things that I have been talking about for quite some time is basically outsourcing the elections, whether it is electronic or paper, someone else does the counting. And in order to make that happen, I think that we have talked with NNE about making it a priority this year to make changes to our bylaws, because the way our bylaws are written right now, we can't do that. And so I think that that's where, you know, the next focus needs to be. Thank you, I know. As far as electronic voting goes, there's been a lot of nationwide discussion lately about electronic voting and the ability to hack and so on and so forth. And as a first step, my comfort level, and this is just me and my opinion, is paper ballots to everybody, send them out to somewhere else, have them counted, and then send the results back to us. This is what my preference would be.
Well, we can have more of a discussion on that at a future meeting, absolutely.
I just want to know what Mike thinks about electronic voting.
I'll take your proxy.
I just wanted to say, we started, NNE started down this road a long time ago. Every time we have 2 elections each year, it's called, you stop, put the brakes on, and start all over again. I'm looking forward to, once this is put to bed, to start that up again. There's a firm down in Bellevue that does hybrid elections, which is both online and ballots. It's called, everybody would get a ballot, everybody would still have their paper ballots. You would send that back to wherever their collection firm is, but you would also get a letter in there that says, hey, if you'd rather vote electronically, you're going to put in this number and this number, and you can vote, and they handle that all for you. It's not inexpensive, but it's a way to go. If you would like to try first, if the board would like to try first, just finding a third-party vendor that would just collect all of our ballots, and that's a way to go too. I haven't looked at that. You know, I know it costs a little bit more to process, I think. I know with the online voting, it's much more expensive for them to open the envelopes, open the security envelopes, record the vote, make sure you can't vote electronically then. But they have all those safeguards in place. But, you know, it's, you know, and maybe that's something you look at instead. But it's, you know, for now I've been looking at both. Because I think it's, you know, online voting is great. I just think it needs to be with an independent party, that there's no way that the board or staff or anyone else interferes with what the voting results are.
Okay, any further board member response? Did we cover everything? Okay.
Make the motion to adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. We adjourn. Thank you.